Good morning. Welcome to the Science Mind class. I'm Dr. Petra, and we're happy that you're with us online. We have only a few of us here in the room. Must be too cold to get out. Everybody's at home in their pajamas, having their coffee, or maybe you're on your way in, and wherever you are in the country, we welcome you to the Science Mind class this morning. So we're in the chapter on finding the Christ. We're at the bottom of page 359. And we're continuing to explore this idea of Christ consciousness and what that looks like, what that means, and of course, in the context of the teachings of Jesus. And so we look upon Jesus as the way shower, as the great example, as someone who has fully embraced the truth of his divinity, and that he speaks from that place. And so at the end of that paragraph, we do not have to contemplate Jesus as being unique and different, for the Bible makes it more than plain that he was a man like as we are, right? And actually in the first three Gospels, Jesus talks of himself in the words that he's reported to have said as the Son of Man. It's only in the last Gospel, the Gospel of John, where we hear him talked about as the Son of God. And so there's a deep recognition that in Jesus, we see someone who is exemplifying and living what it means to have the Christ consciousness. In the case of Jesus, and then this very, very, very last tiny little paragraph, as the human gives way to the divine in all people, they become the Christ. In the case of Jesus, there was such a surrendering of an isolated will that a greater incarnation of the divine actually took place. The mystic Christ comes from the bosom of the unseen Father, Mother, Spirit, proclaiming the love of God through his or her own love of humanity. And so we see also Ernest Holmes using Jesus's language of the Father, which was, of course, contextualized 2100 years ago in a very patriarchal society. And yet I'm going to read you this. I'm going to read you something. It doesn't say that this is from the Voice Celestial, but this next bit is some of Ernest Holmes's poetry. And while he was not Shakespeare, he liked to write poetry. And so he has a fabulous epic poem called The Voice Celestial. And, while there are places where the poetry is not great, it's actually a remarkable piece of work. It's probably his deepest exploration of the human experience of the spiritual path. And it's really quite extraordinary. So it doesn't actually say that this is from The Voice Celestial in here, or maybe this was. Actually, he didn't write The Voice Celestial to the 1950s, so it might be the beginnings of his attempts at writing poetry. So I just invite you to listen and just listen to the language. Asleep in the heart of cosmic love, unborn, universal potential, the Christ child lay, and the great mother soul, brooding over her unborn child, conceived it in the stillness of her universal nature, imparting to it her own being. Born into time and experience, unnoticed, unseen, yet alive and aware, the Christ child incarnated in human form, taking the likeness of men and women, yet giving no sign of its presence, waiting with utmost patience and love, the revelation that should disclose itself and proclaim the reign of peace. Many ages passed and vanished in the long yesterdays of time, and still the Christ child waited. Nations appeared and disappeared, toil, famine, pestilence, and want, hunger, cold, heat, and thirst, war, hatred, blood and ruin, and still the seed of perfection unrevealed. But the universal wholeness cannot be forever subjected, nor cosmic love be kept from human form. That which was given must be revealed. The seed of perfection must burst. The shoots of heavenly planting must break the cords that bind, fanning the human into a blaze divine. And so the long appointed day arrived. A voice from out the stillness spoke, "This is my beloved Son." Let the earth be still in his presence. Let the beasts of the field, the birds of the air, and all living creatures be still. Let the hosts of heaven sing praises, and let deep cry unto deep. Then spoke the child, "I am come to bring peace. I am the child of joy, and to all who will I give life. I am formed of happiness. I am come from the eternal stillness. Quietness and confidence are mine. In the heart of the Father, I have lived forever. O nations and all people, look unto me and be saved. Behold my face shining as the sun, and my feet shod with righteousness. In my left hand are riches and honor, and in my right, peace forevermore. All that I am, all that I have, I give." So it's fascinating in this passage. Where does the birth of the Christ child start? In the great mother soul. In the great mother soul, birthed. And there is a lot of wisdom in the stories about Jesus and in the in the Old Testament as well, recognizing that the idea of the mother is equally as embedded. It's just been mistranslated. The words that were originally used for the mother in the Old Testament are all derivatives of Sophia, which is actually a female pronoun for wisdom, for the presence of love and intelligence in the cosmic birth story, in the creation stories and in the cosmic birth stories. And so it's really interesting that Ernest Holmes in this poem talks about the Christ child being birthed by the great mother soul and lying in wait in creation. Lying in wait in creation, birth, long before 2,000 years ago, and actually birthed into creation, and lying in wait as the seed of perfection. And this is precisely what the Hindus have said and what we teach in the science of mind. Consciousness has been evolving a form into which consciousness can be revealed, which would be self-awareness. It is in self-awareness that consciousness is revealed, that awareness can actually see itself. And the perfection of life can actually recognize that perfection and see the way the universe actually unfolds. And so this Christ consciousness, this consciousness of divinity, is the ultimate consciousness that has been moving evolution to this point. And then it begins to awaken. And of course, in the West, we have the stories about Jesus as one of the most awakened people that we know, or that we at least have some stories about and some teachings from, not just stories about miracles and healings, but also at least paraphrases of words that he would have said, or he might have said, that actually encompass the teaching of what it means to walk around in the world with this awakened consciousness and what it looks like to be that kind of a presence. And so it goes on to say Christ, the idea of universal sonship or daughtership. We might say the idea of universal offspring made in the image and likeness of the divine. The entire creation, both visible and invisible, right? It starts in the entire creation, both visible and invisible. And so we're gonna just, I can't gender neutralize this particular chapter because it's so much using the biblical language, so we're just going to go with it. There is one Father of all, this one Father conceiving within himself, which obviously makes it also the mother, conceiving within himself gives birth to all the divine ideas, right? So we should really, I guess we could say there is one Father, Mother of all. This one Father, Mother conceiving within themselves gives birth to all the divine ideas. The sum total of all these ideas consists the mystic Christ. The sum total of all these ideas, divine ideas, constitutes the mystic Christ, the awareness of these divine ideas. Jesus understood his own nature. He knew that as the human embodies the divine, it manifests the Christ nature. Jesus never thought of himself as different from others. His whole teaching was that what he did, others could do. He located God and the kingdom of heaven within himself. He had plunged beneath the material surface of creation and found its spiritual cause. This cause he called God or the Father. Spiritual cause, that which births divine ideas into creation, that which births divine ideas into form, right? And we understand birthing, conceiving and birthing actually as the mother, and the divine idea as the Father, and the two together are required for the form creation to manifest itself, which of course we see in our own teaching symbol and the creative process. And so finding the Christ is that finding of that divine reality within us and in all of creation, right? In the science of mind, in our declaration of principles, we say the highest God and the innermost God is one God. And we tend to focus on one or the other, the indwelling presence, and we forget about the fact that there is a transcendent reality, or we focus so much on spirit out there that we forget that the truth of our being is that spirit made manifest. And that when we speak the words I am, we are speaking as the divine, as us, with no separation, no gap that needs to be overcome. The Christ consciousness is the revelation of this truth. It's revealed in our seeing, our speaking, the way in which we engage in the world, right? We reveal it by our very presence to the best of our ability. And so this idea that this Father, Mother God has been growing a creation, evolving a creation into which divine awareness can become revealed is really kind of a spectacular thought. So I thought we would stop there. Yeah, let's stop there and talk about Christ consciousness and this idea of a Father, Mother God, or a recognition. It's not so much the indigenous God and Goddess, although that's certainly pointing to it as well, but it is the notion that this oneness is both the impulse that comes from the idea, but it's also, the Hindus call it the womb of potential, in which this idea is planted and this seed springs forth. And so we actually have to understand both of these things. We have to understand and embody and embrace both of these things, both aspects of this spiritual truth. Yeah, okay, I said I was going to stop, so let's stop. So let's stop and we'll turn to Ryan. Good morning, Ryan, and let's welcome people in.
Yeah, well, thank you, Petra, and it's great that you can actually turn to me. Before, like none of you saw it before when we were doing this upstairs. She wouldn't be able to turn to me.
Right, because he was sitting way over here.
Weirdest statement to make. Anyways, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
My name's Ryan, and I'll be your virtual host here with you all today. And for anybody in the room, just raise your hand, and the iconic Richard will help you with the microphone. or I'll race over to you and help you with the microphone as well, just so everybody can hear you online and can just hear what questions and what participation you have. And those who are online here with us, welcome. Those who are joining us via Zoom, you can always participate. We want to hear from you. And you can do that by hitting the raise your hand icon located down below, or simply put in your questions and comments in the chat, and I can bring those into the room. And for everybody joining us on Facebook Live, we love to see you as well. So please give us a shout out inside of the chat, and we can go and bring those into the room as well too. So I just want to poll the room here physically. Does anybody want to ask a question?
Make a
Burning
comment,
desire.
talk about stuff.
All right, and an invitation to those online as well too. Please hit the raise your hand icon and we can bring you into the room. So, Petra.
That's all right. So we're going to talk a little bit. Oh, did you have a question you wanted to pose, Ryan, or should we just carry on?
Yeah, I'd love to throw one out here. So with everything that you've been saying here today, I want you to sum it up in a different way. The things that I heard, and well, I guess my question would be, let's go to the question because I'm going in a weird statement here. Let me back it up. So with this upcoming release, everybody's going through a process of release right now. And we're coming into this new year. How could I apply what you just said to this new year?
Always a good question, right? Our understanding has to be moved into application. And I would say the most significant way to apply this is to spend some time thinking about ourselves as divine. Really, thinking of yourself as already an incarnation. Like, you don't have to become more spiritual. You may have to become more awake, but you can't actually be any more spiritual than you already are. You don't actually have to learn how to use the creative process. You're already using it every single day, all the time. With the sum total of the thoughts and feelings and attitudes that we have and the things that we set into motion, we are using the creative process all of the time. The application is to wake up and to notice that that's what's happening, and to engage consciously and with awareness, to recognize that we are the place where the creative impulse starts in our own lives, and we are the place where we are gestating and birthing ideas into reality in our own lives and contributing to the whole of human consciousness, the whole of human awareness. And so some things that you could stop doing, is any way in which you say to yourself some version of, well, you know, I'm only human. Because you're not. You're actually a place where the universal is waking up to itself. Now, we have human experiences, no question about it. And we have false ideas and we have patterns that have been laid down from the human condition, but you are not only human. You are also a spiritual being. You are the incarnation of life that is both the impulse to create and uses the laws of creation to create. And so to begin to own that, to really begin to own that, and for me, what I notice is that, you know, I wanted to say not in some egoistic way or some hubris way, which is really just us fooling ourselves and saying, I'm in charge, you know, I'm going to control everything. But actually recognizing that this larger universal reality is moving in the world as us. I find that a remarkably humbling experience. And every time I have to ask myself, am I in alignment with that universal presence? Is what I'm doing or what I'm feeling or what I'm thinking or where I'm speaking from, is it in alignment with this universal presence that is in fact seeking to reveal itself in, through, and as me? I mean, lots of times it doesn't really matter. I don't think the universal presence cares whether I'm wearing a blue sweater or a red sweater, right? I think there's a boatload of things we just get to decide. We just get to make up because they have no real impact other than on our own enjoyment and our own expression of life. But there's lots and lots of things that do actually have an impact, and they are actually creating our life experience and the experience of those around us. And so waking up to this fact and really engaging in it, I find an incredibly humbling experience. So Ryan, I saw your hand. I'm going to turn back over to you.
Yeah, I'd like to invite Anita to go ahead and unmute herself. Anita, do you want to come and join the conversation?
Good morning, Anita.
Hey, good morning. I love what you were reading this morning and talking about the mother, Father God, or Father, Mother God, whichever way you want to put that. It reminds me to remember that there's both the divine masculine and the divine feminine in each of us. And to be able to, for some of us, we've struggled maybe with that feminine side, or maybe some of us have struggled with that masculine side. And to come to the full recognition and realization that we are both the masculine and the feminine, and it's both divine and human, right?
Yes.
It's the new way to work towards the fullest form of expression and loving oneself.
Yes. Ooh, man, underscored, exclamation pointed.
It just took me a lot of years to really work to that point where I can say, I'm both.
Yes.
And I love me for exactly how I am.
Yes.
And that's part of the beauty of the birthing of the Christ consciousness, because in that you see both the divine feminine and the divine masculine.
Yes, beautiful. Oh my gosh, Anita, that's so awesome. Thank you so much. Because you see the divine masculine in the speak your word, take up your bed and walk, change the water into wine, whatever right? Speak your word, Lazarus come forth. I don't even have to question that it's going to happen. But in the divine feminine, there's that massive compassion and that inclusivity and the love that pours forth, and both equally present. And so I love what you're saying. And of course, we want to not only categorize divine masculine, divine feminine, human and divine, and what we want to do is put an or in there. Right? We're either one or the other. We're either masculine or feminine. We're either human or divine, because that's what our language and our science has taught us to do. And yet, as we mature in our spiritual thinking and as we mature in our awakening to consciousness, right? As Ken Wilber talks about it, it's transcend and include. We move beyond the either or to the both and, to the paradox of both and. We are both spiritual and human. We are both the divine masculine and the divine feminine, making itself known, revealing itself in creation, and to embrace both. And this is why I believe that a much better thing to seek is not perfection, but wholeness. I think it's unfortunate how much we use the term in the Science of Mind, specifically in the Science of Mind textbook, how much Ernest Holmes uses the word perfect. There is some deep philosophical truth to it. And we can, from a philosophical understanding, recognize that he's speaking about absolute qualities. Therefore, they're not related to anything. So they are, in essence, perfect. And yet, in the human experience, perfection becomes a box, and it becomes conformity, and it becomes comparison, and it becomes all these things. And we disown those parts of us that we think aren't perfect. And yet, Anita, as you so beautifully said, in that place of self-love, I embrace the allness of who I am. And so when we speak of the oneness of life, I think sometimes it's better to speak of the allness of life, and that perfection is the fact that it's all part of the whole, and that we are holy. Our wholeness includes all of this. And what a place of compassion and acceptance. Doesn't mean we might not want to grow, doesn't mean there are things we want to explore, things that we want to get better at. But our essential nature is already whole, and it is the wholeness of the both and. And I so love that you've brought that up. And I think that that's one of the things that we see in these stories about Jesus. We see somebody who is very comfortable with the wholeness of who he is. And he's perfectly comfortable to have parties and hang out with the outcasts and do all those kinds of things, right, as the human being, and also speaks from that spiritual authority of the incarnation. So I think we would do really well, as we're exploring the Christ consciousness, to release the exploration of perfect and to begin to explore our wholeness. We've got a hand up in the room here. So do we want to do that?
Yeah, let's go ahead and.
Okay. Richard's passing the microphone.
Yeah, hi, I'm Jeff. I guess what I'm hearing this morning is it's all about identity. It's kind of like an identity crisis. I think about myself and I say, who am I really? Why am I here? It's like that movie, What the Bleep Do We Know?
Yeah.
And what are we doing here? And I think of the words, and I'm probably going to stumble on a quote here, but Meister Eckhart says, should bother less about what you are to do and focus more on who you are to be. For in your being, if your being is good, everything you do will shine forth brightly. So if I get clear on who I am, this Christ consciousness, it's more important for me to focus on who I am and know who I am. And then everything I do, everything I say is going to be good. It's going to be fruitful. It's going to bless the world. It's going to be life-giving, right?
Yeah, because we're then totally in alignment with the way life is seeking to express itself in the first place, right? And we're participating in creating more and more and more of that. And it does seem from all of our experience and stories of the mystics and the people all over the world for tens of thousands of years that it actually works better when we do that, because then we're living from the inside out, right? Our doingness is informed by who and what we think we are, as opposed to doing stuff so that we will feel something about who we are, right? All the outer things that then tell us who we are. And I talked about this a while back. Karen really caught me short one day when she said, I'm actually what's more impactful to me is the phrase, what I am, as opposed to who I am. Because so often the who I am, we get caught in our human catalog, who I am, right? In the human catalog of, I'm a mother and I'm a, teacher and I'm a whatever. And so the what I am is actually the universe revealing itself as an individual. That's what I am. And it takes some of that egoic I-ness out of it. I thought that was really, really insightful. And it does become the basis from which we operate, right? And so we take the person of Jesus And we say, given the examples that we have in the Bible stories, here seems to be someone who actually absolutely knew who and what he is or was, and that he just lived out of that place. And we see some lovely examples of when he didn't do it perfectly, right? So we have the cursing of the fig tree, which always cracks me up, right? The cursing of the fig tree, there weren't figs on the tree because it was out of season, but he was hungry and he thought he should be able to manifest figs off of it. And so instead of actually manifesting figs, he just cursed the fig tree and he literally killed it. But it wasn't actually naturally supposed to have figs because it was out of season. And then we have the story of the money changers. He went in, he was a little hot under the collar, threw them over because we also have to act in the world. So we have with these moments, right, where humanity does shine through. Doesn't mean it's a cakewalk. The story of Gethsemane, there's oh my God, are you kidding? Really? I'm supposed to do this, move through this from the deepest spiritual place I know. I'm not supposed to resist it. I'm not supposed to fight it. I'm really supposed to do this. And we have those human moments. So he wasn't portrayed as perfect. He was portrayed as holy himself, someone who knew his wholeness, and could act out of that. And that's a really powerful place. It's a deep place of self-honoring and self-love. And of course, the other side of that coin is the recognition that Jesus was not special, which also means that we recognize that in ourselves, neither are we. Because if this is true about us, this is true about each and every single solitary person, each and every single solitary place where self-awareness is waking up, period, end of sentence. And that becomes also really critical, that we recognize. I remember getting a plaque when I was a teenager. Somebody gave me a plaque. And the plaque said, yes, of course you're unique, just like everybody else. And when I got offended, I was all about, my uniqueness. And I was going to find it as a teenager. That's our project as teenagers. And we have to try this. Of course, we don't realize that in seeking our uniqueness, we're trying this persona, we're trying that persona, we're following that group, we're trying, but that's the thing, right? Every time we speak about the divinity of Jesus and our own divinity and the fact that we ourselves are incarnations, we should understand that implied in that, and we should make it explicit over and over and over and over and over again, that this doesn't make us special or different. It's a recognition that this is the truth anywhere self-awareness is waking up. And it is the truth of each and every single solitary human being, period, end of sentence. And that we want to see that and support that awakening everywhere. And sometimes I think when people hear that, they forget that that's included. And it's important to make that explicit, which is why Jesus is not the great exception. If he's the great exception, then we're not able to be that. And if we think of ourselves as somehow the great exception, right, or superior or better than, or because I'm awake, I'm now more spiritual than you, it's nonsense. I may be more awake at the moment, but we all have the opportunity to wake up. But no, we're not any more spiritual, and we're just more aware of it, more conscious of it, more present to the Christ consciousness. Ryan.
Yeah, I see Carl. Do you want to go ahead and join the conversation, Carl, and unmute yourself? Say hello.
Good morning, Carl.
Good morning. Yes, so this is an exciting conversation. I guess, and my question is, or comment is, the practice of awakening, the practices that one takes on to stay awake or to awaken to the presence. And I mean, in the morning, I've been practicing like early, getting up and sitting there in my chair and like intending to be present to the present.
Yes.
And that takes it just and I get these glimpses, but right, I start to feel something, I start to sense something, and sometimes I'll lift my arms up in the air just to kind of like as a way to awaken the body to say, okay, to be conscious. And I'm wondering about practices around that. You know, what are some of the practices we practice to awaken? Because there are times during the day when I know I'm in my head rather than awaken to.
Yeah, it's a great question, Carl. So, so this is called the practice of the presence, and we can do it on our meditation cushion, but you will go much further in the practice if you'll actually do it as you're walking around in your life, because it's much easier to experience the presence on the meditation cushion than it is driving in traffic or dealing with that annoying salesperson on the phone or that spouse or partner or child or business person, right? That is challenging us. So I will tell you that my practice started, and we've talked about this before. I will tell you that my practice started with a contemplation of what in the world does it mean to pray without ceasing, which is what I had read in a lot of the mystics and a lot of the, in addition to meditation, is to pray without ceasing, right? You're walking around in prayer. And of course, I'm a good Roman Catholic from my childhood. And I'm like, okay, if I'm reciting the Lord's Prayer all the time, I don't actually know how I'm going to get any business done. Like, I don't, because it's going on in my brain. Praying meant to me saying a prayer over and over and over again. And I thought, oh my God, and I'm going to be bored out of my mind. And so I really spent a lot of time exploring it. And what the whole idea of praying without ceasing means, it is to always have this universal divine reality at the forefront. God, spirit, whatever you want to call it, however you want to do that. So very, very early in my practice, I was still using the word God a lot more than I do today. And so I thought, well, if praying without ceasing is always keeping your mind on God, then my practice became walking around in the world and having a conversation, and in my mind saying to myself, I'm talking to God, and driving my car, and this too is God, and this light is God, and this, because everything is made out of the one. Everything is an expression of the one, even the chair I'm sitting on. And every single thing I would look at and go, and I would simply name it God. And of course, in the back of my mind, what was happening is that my brain was trying to understand how this physical, inanimate thing could actually be spirit, could actually be God, right? I wasn't actually asking that question to myself. I wasn't trying to analyze it. I wasn't trying to figure it out. I was simply naming it and forcing my brain to incorporate that as a piece of information and do something with it, right? And so then what I noticed is, after doing that for quite a while, what I noticed is that as I was talking to people, particularly, let's say somebody that I was feeling confronted by, or I was seeing something on the television and somebody was behaving in a way that I didn't like or had opinions about, I noticed that I began to see them as babies, like as a little baby. Every little baby that I've ever come across, don't they just like beam God? They beam spirit, they beam love. I mean, they're just, and I thought, well, each person, no matter what I think about them, no matter what kind of an emotional reaction I might be having to them, came into this world the same. God, divine presence, right? And so for me, the practice of the presence really became walking around in the world and practicing seeing everything as the presence of the one. Not and being able to distinguish that not every action is the action of the one, but every presence is the presence of the one, right? and being able to make that distinction really allows us to see through the veil of human experience and actions to the spiritual truth, right? And of course, nature screams presence if we'll walk around in the world in nature and just invite it to reveal that presence to us. So that's a long-term daily practice that I've done that really over time absolutely shifted everything for me. And we have a comment in the room, Ryan, over here. So thank you, Carl. And we'll go over here to Chantel. Yes, comment, question. He's going to bring you a microphone so the people online can hear you, just so that everybody gets to hear what you have to say.
Welcome to the beginning of the morning. Quick question. Are we born with the essence of Christ consciousness, or is that something that has to be developed, activated? What does that look like?
Well, as we talked about that at the beginning of the class, it's all right. So from the science of mind point of view, the Christ consciousness is the consciousness of the universal. It is the consciousness of the universal, and it has been evolving an organ in which it could wake up to itself. So Christ consciousness is already the truth of our being. All we're doing is waking up to it. We were born with it. All of creation has it. All of creation has consciousness. We call it Christ consciousness only because it is in the person of Jesus the Christ that the awakened expression of it seems in the West most available to us. We could just as easily, well, in the East, they call it the Buddha nature, right? Which is exactly the same thing as the Christ consciousness. So we could call it awakened consciousness. We could call it being aware that we are individualized expressions of the universal, walking around with that awake, aware consciousness, right? You were born an individualized expression of the universal. You don't have to become that. And I think that's really important because we think we have to grow into something. We have to like bridge a gap. I have to become spiritual. No, we have to wake up to who and what we actually already are. And when we wake up to that, it changes everything because it realigns everything. And so we're talking about the Christ consciousness because it's at this big chapter in the book. Lots of people use it. I don't use the word Christ consciousness for exactly the question that you asked, Chantel, because it somehow feels like special and different, right? Like the Buddha nature is special and different, and we have to become that somehow. No, we have to wake up to that. And our lives, the more and more and more that we reveal that, the more alignment we have. And Carl, to your question, to your point, right? The more we're walking in the practice of the presence, the more aligned our lives show up like that. And yeah, that's just a beautiful thing. Then we really are being that and exuding that to the best of our ability in any given moment. And I will tell you, I can tell when I'm already moving out of that awareness. And each and every time I think, oh, that's actually not how I had wanted to show up, right? When we feel that, when we have that sense of that is not how I wanted to show up, then we know that we've drifted away from being, we've fallen asleep. We've gone onto autopilot. Some other pattern has taken hold, and we have behaved or thought or spoken out of that. And it's a constant reframing back into spiritual truth, back into alignment with this awareness, this Christ consciousness, this Buddha nature. And and it's really, and so again, Carl, I really want to underscore your comment, your question, finding practices, finding reminders. This is why we read great scripture, read the mystics. There, you'll read something that someone said Jeff quoted Meister Eckhart or the Buddha or the Tao Te Ching, or right, there'll be a phrase or something that you just go, that speaks to me, right? And so then be with it, live with it, contemplate it, walk around in the world with that in the background, and it will continually remind you that the presence is already here. What we want to do is wake up to it, notice it to the best of our ability, and find the things that stand in the way, right? The veils that cover our experience and our awareness of it. So great questions. And I do want to say, remember, it doesn't always have to be a question too. It can be a comment or just a sharing. And we always love it when people in the room and online are participating. And we love, love, love having you here. So, and it's, of course, you know, it's always so interesting. Inevitably, we come to this chapter, Finding the Christ, either at Christmas or Easter. I mean, it's just every single time we go through the book. I love it. Okay, so we're going to carry on with all of this, and I'm going to invite you to read ahead and, you know, bring your thoughts about it. What's hard about it? What's easy about it? What works for you to remember these things, to find yourself in alignment with it? We'll find some more poetry in here. Yeah, because it's a state of consciousness. It's not just an intellectual knowing, nor is it really just a feeling. It's actually neither one of those things. It's a state of consciousness. And we can follow our thoughts and our feelings towards that state. So read ahead and bring your comments to next week's class. It's really lovely to spend Sunday morning with you. We'll see you in celebration in 30 minutes, or we'll see you on December 24th in person or live streamed for our Christmas Eve celebration, 6 o'clock Central Time. Super fabulous evening. So in the meantime, have a wonderful week. Bye for now.